Hello, this is John Martin, and I'm your host today on Road to Redemption, a weekly show sharing life testimonies, giving folks hope. And I'm so happy to have my friend Trey begin on the show today. Trey, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, hey, let's just get right into it, Trey. Tell us a little bit about you, your background, where you grew up, that type of thing.
Yeah. Well, right now, present day, I'm 42 years old. I'm married. We live in Inlet Beach right now, and we've been living there for 2 years. I have 6 beautiful, wonderful daughters from 15 to 3, and we've moved here right as almost the day everything got shut down from COVID. From New Orleans, Louisiana, just north of New Orleans on the North Shore, if anybody knows where that's from, Covington, Louisiana. But we always say New Orleans because it's easier for everybody to know where it's from. And so we lived there for 21 years and did a few things over there in my life and really raised all of my children over there. But I first moved over there from Germany, where I was in the Air Force. And then before the Air Force, I was in Indiana, in Greenfield, Indiana, and then Fort Wayne, Indiana. And then I was born at Baptist Hospital in New Orleans, Louisiana. So I was born in New Orleans. My family's all from there. And so that's just a brief history of my life and where I've been throughout my life.
Great. Well, and when you were in New Orleans, I know you shared a little bit in our group about your journey and how you came to know Christ, and would you share a little bit about that? And
Yeah. So growing up, my parents, they were Christians, and they went to church and brought me to church. It was kind of like, I had to go to church. It was forced. I would say it was kind of forced upon me, but I never really willingly went to church. I was asked forcefully to go to church, and so I went. And I think I knew of Christ, but didn't have a relationship with Him. And so throughout my schooling, high school days in Fort Wayne, I got into a minor bit of trouble, and I did things that what I wanted to do. I had a very controlling family, and I kind of rebelled a little bit in that family, and I wouldn't say a little bit, a lot of it in that family. And at some point in that lifetime in high school, I realized that if I didn't change what I was doing, because I was going down a really slippery slope at that time, if I didn't change what I was doing, I was going to end up dead or in prison. And so I decided that I needed to change my life at that point. The crazy thing is I didn't even really think about going towards God at that point. I just thought I needed to change my life, my environment. And if I changed my life and my environment, then it would change me and what I was doing, and it would change my future. And so I decided, instead of going to college with all the party kids, which I did that for a semester, that I was going to join the military. That was going to give me the structure and help me with discipline and all of those things. And I would have an excuse to not use drugs and not drink and not do all the things. And so I joined the United States Air Force and went to basic training. Originally went in for explosive ordnance disposal, EOD, but then I eventually reclassed out of there and went into aerospace ground equipment, which we referred to that as a glorified grease monkey. We just worked on a flight line and worked on, anyway, I don't really have to go into detail of what we did, but we worked on the flight line. And through that, I was sent to Germany for my first assignment. And when I went to Germany, I met a man there, another airman friend of mine that ended up becoming a friend of mine. And he introduced me to another guy, and before you know it, I was into the same things I just came out of. I was drinking, I was going to clubs, hanging out. And then there was this guy that decided that, he would offer me some drugs. And so that led me to drug use, which led me to selling drugs. I won't go into detail of what all that I did there, but it led to a year and a half of transporting, selling, use of drugs. And then I got caught by OSI, which is the undercover police of the base, the Air Force. And when I got caught, I was facing pretty significant prison time at that time. That was when, at that time, it was in the early 2000s, late 1999, 2000. And at that time, drug use and transporting drugs, selling drugs, it was running rampant in Europe at the time, especially on base. And I happened to be a key contributor in that area. And so my commander of the base wanted to make an example out of me. One of the reasons why is because I won a lot of awards during that time. At the time, I was always featured as far as when, dignitaries would come into the base, or anytime anybody was presented or featured in front of all of the airmen, it was me. And I was promoted faster than anybody had ever been promoted in all of European Command. And so I was this face of the Air Force in Europe. And so then I got caught doing these things. And so they wanted to make me the face of this crime that I committed, which I deserved it. I'm not saying I didn't deserve it. And so at that time, there were people that were using drugs that were going to prison for a year. And my immediate commander of my maintenance squadron, what ended up happening, it's a long story. There's a lot of details, but what ended up happening is my commander gave me an Article 15 rather than sending me to court-martial. And my lawyer was like, hey, sign that right now before we leave his office. Do not even think about it. Sign it. And he kept me from going to prison.
Wow.
And when he kept me from going to prison that next day, and I knew my commander at a personal level more than most other airmen did, because at that time, like I said, I was featured in front of a lot of other people, and I had a direct connection with him and his family. I actually toured him and his family around the base the first day that they got there. And so I had a deeper connection with him than most other people. And so after he gave me that Article 15, he actually met me by the copy machine, which commanders and airmen, enlisted and officers, they're not really supposed to intermingle. And so he met me at the copy machine, and he said, Airman Begin, I just want you to know it's my honor to command you, and I hope one day that I'll be able to command you in the future. And I didn't know what he was talking about or what he meant by that. But the next day he was transferred to another base. And I believe that it was because he didn't make an example of me, that he gave me that lenient punishment, that he gave me that Article 15. He kept me from prison. He literally saved me. And I believe that it was God working through him, that he saved me from that prison sentence. And so I went into 45 days of extra duty. They took away all my pay, all kinds of stuff that happened with an Article 15. It was the maximum punishment of an Article 15. If you know what that means, you kind of know what happens with that. So I worked for 45 days from 7 in the morning to 7 at night, and they took away all my pay and all my rank. And I had bills to pay at the time. As an airman, you kind of don't get paid much at first in the beginning anyway. And you have, a car, and, you have other things that you acquire, bills to pay. And so I decided that I was going to work at a grocery store and stock shelves from 8 o'clock at night to 2 o'clock in the morning. And I did that every day. And then I would go home and I would sleep for a couple hours. I'd get up and I'd go to work and I'd do it all over again. And so I did that for 45 days straight until I got out of that, that sentence, and went back to work like normal. And then a new commander came in. And the new commander came in, and I met him at his plane when he arrived, just like I normally do with every commander that comes into our base. So I thought nothing of it, but he called me to meet him. So I met him, I saluted him. He was coming down the staircase. I remember it very clearly in my mind, still to this day. And as he's coming down the staircase, he says, "Airman, begin. My job, my number one job on this base is to send you to prison for as long as I possibly can." And he didn't salute me back, and he just walked off and had me meet him at his office every morning at 7 a.m. from that day forward for the next 30 days. And every morning I would meet him in his office in my dress blues, which is not my normal uniform. It's the dress uniform. And I would meet him in his office, and he would tell me the same thing. "Airman, begin. My number one job is to send you to prison for as long as I possibly can. Go to work." And he would send me to go get dressed, go to work. And so after 30 days of doing that, it kind of beats you up a little bit. And so towards the end of that, I was almost like, just do whatever you want to do, whatever you need to do. I don't care what it is. Just let me know what that is so that I can just go ahead and start doing it. What ended up happening is it was just something stupid that happened before any of this even happened. It was like a noise violation that happened that he ended up being able to charge me on. And since I was in probation, he was able to kick me out of the Air Force, general under honorable conditions.
Wow.
And so he sent me home to out process, and that was it. I was done with my United States Air Force service at that moment. And he basically, when he was telling me that what was going to happen, he said, "The best thing that I could do is to remove you from my United States Air Force." And I said, "Well, that's it. That's all I can do. I can't do anything more." And you know what? At the time, I knew I deserved more. I knew I deserved more than that. And so I was just grateful for where I was at that moment.
Where were you with God at this point?
Still didn't have a relationship with him. And throughout this entire process is about 6 months. So it's not like it happened in a short time period, even though I was charged with quite a few counts of use and distributing. It didn't happen within 2 weeks. It took a while to process through this. And through that time period, I asked my commander, the original commander that I had, to go home to tell my parents what was going to happen to me, and for 30 days of leave. And he approved it. And one of the things that he told me when I came back from that leave was, 1, I should have never approved the leave. And 2, I actually thought you'd never come back, because most people that are facing the prison term that you faced would have never come back. They would have just ran. They would have ran away. And so when I went home, I spent 29 days partying, just partying,
continuing on,
just crazy. And I spent 1 day at my mom and dad's house, preparing myself to tell them that I was going to go to prison for quite a while. It could have been up to 10 years. And so I remember making a reservation at a hotel room for that night, because in my mind, what had happened in the past was that I was going to be the black sheep of the family. I was going to be disowned. I was going to be told that I didn't belong there anymore. I was going to be told that basically that they didn't love me anymore, that I was a bad person, all of these things. And that's what I was prepared to hear, because I've heard it in the past from them. And that was a track record throughout my entire life as a child, as a teenager, even up to that point. And so I went into the room with my mom and dad and told them what was going to happen. And the first thing that came out of my mom's mouth was, "When can I come see you?" And, the first thought in my mind was, I don't want you to come see me in prison in Germany. Like, that's who wants that to happen? And so I said that. I said, I don't want you to come see me. I don't want you near me. I don't want you to be a part of that. I don't want you to see me behind bars. Next time you'll see me is when I get out. And so my mom just cried, and she held me, and she prayed for me, and my dad prayed for me. And that was the first time that I'd ever seen truly. I didn't know at the time what I was seeing. I didn't understand it. What I understood was that it was different. What I saw was something different in my parents. But what I didn't notice was that it was love. That was love, true love. And I went back to the base, went through all of that, and then they sent me back home to out-process, actually in Ohio, right Patterson. And I had a choice. I could either go back to Fort Wayne, Indiana, which is where my life where that fork in the road was in the beginning, where I knew I had to leave, or I could go to New Orleans, which is where my parents had moved to take care of their parents. And so I decided to go live with my parents for a little while until I could figure out what I really wanted to do with my life at that point. Because this was still kind of a shock, that even though I knew that this could be a potential, in my life, it still was kind of a shock. And so I went to New Orleans, and my parents said, "Hey, we found this new church. We want to know if you'd like to go with us this weekend. We haven't been yet, but we heard it's really cool. We'd love for you to come with us this Sunday." And so in my mind, I thought, I've been to plenty of church services. Absolutely. Why not? I'll go. Sure. And so I walked into the church service, and walking into the church service, I was smoking up to 2 packs a day, pack and a half to 2 packs a day, drinking every day, using drugs every day. And so I walked into service not looking for a life change, just walking into service to kind of appease my parents, even though I'm an adult, just wanting to get on their good side a little bit, because I'm living in their house for a little while. And so I'm walking into the service, sit down, and praise and worship is going on. And this is in Church of the King in Mandeville, Louisiana. And our pastor there was Pastor Steve Robinson. And he gets up in the middle of praise and worship, and he never really does that. I've never seen him do that since then. And he stops praise and worship in the middle, and he doesn't really say anything eloquent, or he's a very great speaker. He speaks well, and I mean, he's such a great speaker. But he gets up and he says, I don't even really know what to say right now, but I know that there's someone out here in this audience that needs a relationship with Christ, and you know who you are. And all I'm going to ask you to do is raise your hand. And at that moment, when he walked up on stage, God revealed to me that what I was seeing in my parents when they were loving on me and praying for me was his love through them, not their love. And so he let me see his perfect, pure love for me through them. And he was showing me his love. And as soon as he showed me that, I just knew that I needed this relationship with him. Like, that's the love I desired my whole life. And so I went up to the front and I started praying, or I met this man that was leading me through the sinner's prayer. And his name's Marty Simone. He's the best. He's just such a great man, but he was an ex-cop, and I didn't know it at the time. And it doesn't matter anyway, but he's an ex-cop. And he said, Trey, do you believe that you want to have a relationship with Christ? And I said, yes, I do. But the problem is I have all these things that I've done in my life, and I have all these things that I'm addicted to, and I need God to take all of them away from me. Like the memories, the thoughts, the addictions, all of these things that I deal with, those are the things that keep me coming back. And I need God to take all that away from me. And Mr. Marty goes, well, brother, we're just going to believe that God's going to do that. And I said, no, Mr. Marty, you don't understand. I need God to take away a lot of bad things that I've done. I've done a lot of bad things in my life. And I need God to take away all of those things. And so again, he says, well, Trey, we're going to believe that God's going to do that. We're going to pray, and we're going to believe that God is going to take away all of those things. And I said, again, Mr. Marty, you don't understand what I've done in my life. I've done really bad things. Like, short of killing someone, I've done a lot of bad things. And I've thought of killing people before. And I haven't acted on that, but I've thought of it at times in my life. And I've done a lot of bad things. I need God to take away that, because I don't know if I can do this without God taking that away from me. And he said, well, we're going to believe that God's going to do that. Let's pray about that. So he led me in the sinner's prayer, and he prayed with me that God would take away all those things from me. And I felt peace, and I felt the love. I felt that love that I felt with my parents. I felt that love inside of me. And I walked out of that church service, and there was somebody smoking outside, right outside the doors. And when I walked out that service and smelt the smoke of the cigarettes, it made me sick to my stomach.
Wow.
And I literally my first thought was, God, I cannot believe you actually did it. I can't believe that you actually did that.
Wow.
For me.
Wow. And what amazing.
That was the moment that I was like, this is, God, you changed my life. You are what I needed when I knew that I needed a change in my life. You are what I knew I needed.
Amazing. Well, Trey, this is such a great story, and I know people are being touched by this, because a lot of people think that all the sins and all the things they've done are just too much. It's great that obviously you were redeemed and healed, and you've got a great story. Talk to us a little bit now about your redemption. What happened next to where you are today?
Yeah. So, I was out of the Air Force, now in a relationship with God, hungry for God, just on fire for him. But now I have this story, right? I have this crazy story. And, I think the tendency of someone that has a story like mine is to hide it, is to hide that past that we have, because people will judge who we are because of that past. And God challenged me to share and be as transparent and open as I could at the time, because there's some things that I can't be transparent with. But he asked me to be transparent and open, because he showed me that as a leader, if I'm transparent and open, I allow other people to be vulnerable and transparent and open.
Yeah.
Because of that. And so he challenged me to share my story. And 2 weeks later, I met this girl in the same row of church as me. And she actually met my sister and thought that I was my sister's boyfriend, and invited us to a party at her house. And I'd never been to a Christian party. And so I was like, I kind of was excited, but nervous. I didn't know what to do. Like, normally I would be drinking and doing some drugs and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. And so I just didn't know what to do. And so I showed up and we hung out and just had snacks and played board games and stuff and talked about God. And so this girl asked me to share my story. What's God done in your life? And so I just started talking about what God did in my life. And so she was like, I cannot believe you were that vulnerable and transparent with me. I've never had anybody be that transparent with me in their life. And it ended up turning into a relationship, and that's my wife right now. And it was a year and a half. We were dating, and so I met her at church, and we turned into a relationship. We dated for a little while, but I knew that God had placed her in my life for a reason at that time. it would be easy to say that my life was just so simple and so easy after having a relationship with God, but that's not exactly the way that things have worked out. I went to work for one of the top 10 Walmarts in the nation, and which was awesome. It was a great experience. But then Katrina hit, which was a huge impact in the world, but definitely New Orleans. And through that whole process, I burnt out. I burnt myself out, and I didn't really know what burnout was at the time, but that's what I experienced. Now that I look back at it, we got pregnant with our first child, and we lost our first child right before Katrina.
Oh, wow.
And then we decided to take a year off, a year after Katrina, and we moved to Florida to volunteer at a Young Life camp in Ocklawaha, Florida. So that was our quarter life crisis, is what we call it, with our newborn child, our newborn child, the second child in our life. And then we moved back to New Orleans, and we started working for Next Generation, which was an inner city outreach organization that really what we did was we did moral and character development in schools, which was highly needed in the city of New Orleans at the time. Kids were living on couches in their aunt's house, that not having any parental figures around, not having any grandma or grandfather, or many kids living in one house with one grandmother, or whatever the situation was, just a lot of a need for moral character development. And then I started my own company, cleaning, because I was very bad at raising money, just terrible at raising money. So I decided to clean offices at night and on the weekends, and that business grew like crazy. But then a lot of pressures happened, and I really, what happened was, as success followed me through this whole journey, I kind of started to alienate myself, and kind of dropped friendships and relationships along the way. And when that started happening, I started to drink. It started with one or two
drink,
and which wasn't a big deal at parties or special occasions, things like that. But then that started to lead to more. And as the relationships started to drop off a little more and a little more and a little more, the drinking started to gain traction. And I started to grow into an alcoholic. And at the time, I didn't realize it. I just thought I was using it to alleviate pressure, to get these burdens off of me, to relax, to get out of pain. I was working a lot at the time, so I just felt I needed it at the time. My marriage was not, it was great, but it was good. It was not great. And so stressful times, I would pick up a few drinks and I would have a few drinks. And so this little thing that started off as like an occasional thing turned into a habit. And then one night I decided to go drive out and get another beer after having several. And I got pulled over and got a DWI and put in jail. And in that jail cell, I've heard stories of people saying like they've completely sobered up at times, and like God spoke to them in this sober environment. I've heard of these things happening. And I was in this jail cell and it was crazy, but I was on the concrete floor and I was praying. And God, like, all of a sudden I got sober and I heard God's voice, and he said, I did not save you from prison so that you could put yourself back here. And when he said that, I knew exactly what he was talking about. And I knew that what he had called me to be was a leader. What he had called me to be was an impact on other men. What he had called me to be was an influence for him. And what he desired for me to be was a better husband, father, a stronger influence in the community, just a light in this world. And I was not being that. And so I stepped out of that jail cell and knew exactly what he meant. And it started with admitting that I had a problem, and then surrounding myself with the right people that would hold me accountable to that problem. And then what I realized was I didn't have the right organizational structure around me. And there wasn't really, what I desired wasn't really around me at all. And so I had some conversations with some friends of mine and a couple pastors. And I said, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Does this exist anywhere around there? And they were like, no, we don't know of anything like that. And what I was looking for was a group of business owners or CEOs that were in pursuit of a higher level of leadership for themselves and their families and in the community. Not just a Bible study, but people that were in pursuit of that higher level of leadership and connection and relationship with God, and wanted to be accountable, wanted to hold themselves and others at a higher level of accountability. And so they were like, no, that doesn't exist. We don't really know of anything like that exists. And so I said, well, it doesn't exist, so I guess I just need to create it. And so I just set out on a journey and started talking to my friends and saying, hey, I'm doing this. And I'm not drinking. I'm making a declaration that I'm going to be a better father, a better husband, and a better leader, and this is how I'm going to do it. And if you're not coming with me, I'll still be your friend, but it's not going to be the same level of friendship that we had at one time. But I'm inviting you to come along with me, and this is how we're going to do it. And so I laid out a game plan. I put together groups of men, and we started growing a leadership development group within our church. And we started growing that leadership development from a group of 12 guys to now thousands of men have gone through that development with my pastor and another friend of mine that helped me start it.
What's the name of that?
We just call it Men's Leadership Development. Okay. But it's grown into a women's group as well, and they've helped marital couples go through it now as well, and other churches have gone through it. But it's something that moment in that jail cell when he showed me where he saved me from and where I put myself at, he showed me that that's not what his plan was for me.
Yeah. Well, Trey, wow, you've got an amazing story, and I know you've had a lot of success. You moved over here to the Destin 38 area. You have a executive coaching business. I know you speak and mentor people all over the world. What would you see? What advice do you have for someone listening today that might relate with your story that needs hope? What advice do you have for them?
I think the best piece of advice that I could give someone, I think that may or may not find themselves in the position that I was at, or that I'm at now. Because oftentimes I'll still find myself thinking that I'm alone and that I'm the only one going through this, and that no one will understand. No one can relate. There's nobody that I can talk to. They won't understand me. That goes through my head all the time. And the only way that I can combat that is by taking the opposite action and connecting with people that care about me, that I know care about me, that I know will hold me accountable when I say that I'm dealing with these thoughts. And when I connect with relationships that I know love me, and these people, they're friends. Some of them I haven't been friends with for a long time. It's just been a couple of meetings that I've had, or a couple of lunches, or a coffee. But when I get it out of my head, through my mouth, and out into a conversation, it loses its power. And then I can move forward in my life and not have to think about those things anymore. And the other thing is I can ask that person to pray with me about it. And there's a power in prayer and in relationship. And that would be the advice. Seek prayer and relationship and get those thoughts out of your mind through acting the opposite way.
Cool. Well, that's great stuff, Trey. And if folks, anyone listening that, is relating with this story, we just want to encourage you to open a Bible, just even if it's the app, the YouVersion app on your phone. Open that Bible, start reading the Bible. God will speak to you. He will come and meet you right now. Just take that simple step. The next thing we would love for you to do is just go to a church. Go anywhere. Go to a church, join a local church, and get involved. And the last thing would be to join a small group, an accountability group within your church that's going to hold you accountable, just like Trey has had and has really, been impactful in his life. Be a part of a group. So just start reading God's word, get involved in a church, and join a small group. God is there, and he wants to bring you hope. And Trey, thank you for sharing your story today. It was so impactful. I know it's going to help a lot of people.
Thank you. And the one thing about accountability is I first believed it meant weak, that I was weak. And good. I realized that without accountability, I cannot be strong.
Wow.
And there's strength in accountability. And I just want to encourage whoever's listening here that has that thought in their mind that accountability means weakness. It actually means the opposite, that you can be even stronger with a group of accountability or with accountability in your life. And that is the key to strength in your life.
Amen. Oh, that's great. Well, Trey, thanks again for joining us. It's been a great talk, and we look forward to having you come back sometime.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Good stuff.